We're here to protect you and the ones that you love. It's a good feeling to know that our efforts aren't going unnoticed.
It actually brought tears to my eyes to know that we have this support.
You're welcome. I must just say, you're welcome. It's stressful, but we're not going anywhere.
Welcome to another edition of Bucknell Wrestling Decades. Tonight we have the decade of the 1990s, and we've got some outstanding alumni on our call, joining head coach Dan Wernsberger and one of our current student athletes, Brandon Seidman. Brandon is a junior, 125-pounder from Doylestown, Pennsylvania, and we appreciate Brandon getting on the call. My name's Todd Newcomb, and I want to thank our sponsor, Geisinger, for all that they have done throughout the pandemic for our community and all of the Pennsylvania area, as well as what they do day in and day out for our student athletes here at Bucknell. So thank you to Geisinger for tonight's session. Got a great group of alums, and I want to get right to the introductions. I know Coach wishes he had some of these guys back in his lineup, and you'll know why once I start talking about what they've done. So first of all, from the class of 1991, Brian Burns. Brian was a 3-year letter winner and team captain in both 1989 and 1990. He ranks 19th on the school's all-time wins list with 81 victories. His career winning percentage of 72.8% ranks 12th all-time at Bucknell. He was an East Coast Conference champion in 1989 and 1990, and then an East Coast Wrestling Association champion in 1991. He was a 3-time NCAA qualifier where he won a total of 6 matches, and he was an All-American in 1991. He won the Bison Club Award at the Athletic Department Senior Awards Dinner, and Brian was inducted into the Bucknell Athletics Hall of Fame in 2015. Our next guest, also from the class of 1991, is Tommy Marchetti, who is a 4-year letter winner and the team captain in both 1989 and 1990. He ranks 10th on the school's all-time wins list with 106 victories. His career winning percentage of 81.3% ranks 5th all-time at Bucknell. He also ranks 5th in school history with 41 career pins. He was a 2-time East Coast Conference champion, including the Outstanding Wrestler in 1990 and an East Coast Wrestling Association champion as a senior. He was a 3-time NCAA qualifier where he won a total of 8 matches, including 4 by fall. He became Bucknell's very first All-American in 1989. Tom won the Christy Mathewson Award at the Athletic Department Senior Awards Dinner, and Tommy was inducted into the Bucknell Athletics Hall of Fame in 2009. Our next guest from the class of 1994 is Bobby Ferraro. He was a 4-year letter winner and team captain in 1992, 93, and 94. He ranks 4th on the school's all-time list with 118 victories. His career winning percentage of 80.6% ranks 2nd all-time at Bucknell. He ranks 4th in school history with 44 career pins. He was a 4-time East Coast Wrestling Association champion. He was a 4-time NCAA qualifier where he won a total of 7 matches, and he was an All-American in 1994 and again in 1995 as a graduate student. He was a National Wrestling Coaches Association All-Academic Team selection in 1995, and Bobby won the Christy Mathewson Award at the Athletic Department Senior Awards Dinner. He was inducted into the Bucknell Athletics Hall of Fame in 2004. Our next guest from the class of 1995 is Steve Caruso. Steve was a 3-year letter winner and an East Coast Wrestling Association champion in 1995, and he was also an NCAA qualifier at 134 pounds in the 95 season. And our final guest representing the tail end of the decade is Benga Akinabe. Benga is from the class of 2000. He was a 2-year letter winner in the wrestling program, and we're going to hear tonight some of the outstanding things that Benga's been up to since he graduated. So, Coach, it's a great group. Turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Nuke. Thank you for doing this. And Brandon, thanks for being on here. And not only Benga, when he was a 2-year letter winner or whatever, and then he came back, like, I think it was 12 years later and beat up on one of my guys in the wrestling room. I'll never forget his return back to the wrestling room. But congratulations to all you guys. Thanks for taking time out to be here. There's a lot of hardware on this Zoom call tonight, a lot of success. So congratulations on your careers, what you're able to do at Bucknell with the Bucknell University Wrestling Program. But more importantly, you know, the life after peace, life after Bucknell, life after wrestling, and to see how successful each and every one of you guys are. I know it means a lot. This is being recorded, so our fan base will be able to see it. Our current wrestlers will be able to see it, and other alumni. So it's going to be a great session tonight. It's going to be a fun trip to go down memory lane and hear some stories from you guys and give each other a hard time. These have been a blast. I've enjoyed them thoroughly. I wasn't sure when we first got into them, but it's been a lot of fun, especially when we had the group from the 50s and 60s on. It was really interesting. Took us a while to get them onto the Zoom call to begin with, but then once we got them on, it was a lot of fun. We had a blast. So, but congratulations, you guys, for successful careers. I'll start, Steve, with you, a first question, and I'll just pick you guys out as we go along. Before we get into the great memories, can you update us just on where you're at in life? You know, where do you live, your career, family, a little bit about your personal life, et cetera.
Sure. I am living in New Hartford, New York, which is my hometown. I went back after college and have been here since. I'm an investment advisor, chief investment officer at Caruso Investment Advisors. My wife, Stacy, I met at Bucknell, so we've been together a long time. And I got two kids, Becky and Michael. Becky's a senior. We were actually on campus maybe a month or so back for a visit, and got to tour Davis Gym, which was a lot of fun. Exciting. Snuck around the field house a little bit. I don't think we were supposed to be in there, but I got in a little bit of trouble again, I guess, on campus. But yeah, so I got two kids. My son's in 9th grade and wrestles here locally. I coached the high school team for many years, and now my brother's actually the varsity coach. So I get to go in and play around without any of the stress, which is nice. And that's about it. Things are good.
How is it coaching your own son, if you don't mind me asking? I find it very difficult for myself personally.
Yeah, I get kind of mixed reactions. I'm probably a little hard on him.
Yeah.
But yeah, luckily he's, he takes after our side of the family a little bit. He doesn't get too bothered by it.
That's great. That's great. I find that I'm not a very good coach for my own boys.
Yeah.
But, gets a little bit too emotional, but that's awesome, Steve. Hey, Bobby, why don't you give us an update where you're at?
I live in Camp Hill, Pennsylvania. Have 3 kids. My stepson's at Westchester University as a junior. I have a 15-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old daughter. Both of them are active, so we're chasing them around. I currently run the National High School Coaches Association that runs a couple of big events in wrestling, in the sport of wrestling, and that's really it.
It's great. That sounds good, man. Thanks for the update.
Yeah.
When are we gonna get those duels going again?
Yeah. Well, we have a slip-in event in November. So,
really?
Yeah, I'll send you something on it.
Yeah. There seem to be tournaments every weekend I'm seeing, and
yeah,
we participated in one last weekend.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
In State College, where there wasn't a whole lot of social distancing going on.
Yeah. Yeah, I know there's varying degrees.
Unlike the Bucknell is a tight, and Steve, I'm sorry we couldn't connect when you were there. I mean, Bucknell is a tight bubble right now. Even at the time when you guys were visiting, I couldn't get into my own facility. So it's been tricky, but I think we're starting to navigate through it, and we're just keeping our fingers crossed that things progress the right way and we have a season. Tom Marchetti, talk to us about just an update as far as where you're at personally.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Bobby, I'd love to find out about the Virginia duels because I was actually online for an hour today trying to find out any information. So you better fix that before your dad finds out because that's lost revenue. So I'm living in Chatham, New Jersey. I've been here about 10 years. I'm married. My wife Daphne of about we got married in 2007, so I guess that's like 13 years. I've got an 11-year-old boy named Tommy. I got a 10-year-old boy just turned 10 on the 7th. They both wrestle. They're both very active. I do coach them, and they'll tell you it's a lot easier for me than it is for them. So I sympathize with your kids, Dan. I spent 25 years on Wall Street in a career working in the energy sector as a strategist, portfolio manager, president of an international research company. And now I'm basically working as an independent consultant, helping companies transition to a new low carbon environment. That's about it.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it. Brian.
Yeah, you guys hear me okay? I guess I'm the old guy because all my kids are a lot older than all you guys. So my oldest is actually a nurse. She's 25. She works in Arlington, Virginia. I've got 3 kids. My youngest is a junior at in university, and my middle daughter is a senior. And all of them, 2 of them, I guess, are pretty active in sports. My son, I coached throughout, and he ended up placing 5th in Virginia States, which is in Pennsylvania, but hey, it's something. And I was really proud of him. He accomplished a lot more than I did in high school. So he got it out of his system early, I guess, right? And he's not wrestling in college, but he's had some injuries along the way. And my daughter was soccer, field hockey, lacrosse, and now is into snowboarding, and went to the snowboard nationals and took 13th there. So I was proud of her. In fact, COVID hit. I think it was Sunday. So the event was canceled kind of halfway through. So she got through to the slalom event, and then I guess it's the giant slalom where the slope was closed. That was when COVID kind of first hit. And I think that was the last time I was anywhere kind of on vacation, really. But yeah, so we're here in Virginia. We've been here for 20 years. And before that, we were in Nashville for 5 years. So moved around a little bit, followed my career in telecommunications.
Great. Thanks for the update, Brian. Benga, we'll turn it over to you. I think last I saw you was in New York City with Mr. Graham and To Kill a Mockingbird on Broadway there, which was really, really cool experience for me because I've never experienced that before. And and my son just read the book this summer. That was his summer reading project, was To Kill a Mockingbird, and do a report as he started school a couple weeks ago. So kind of cool. Made me think about that time we spent with you there. So give us an update, or give our fan base out there and our alumni base an update as far as where you're at and what you're doing.
I just have to say it's really cool to see you, Bobby. I can't stop smiling. It's so wild to see you. It's so cool to see you, man. Right now I'm in Schenectady, New York, trapped in a hotel room. It's been since graduating. Had a lot of different jobs. Like I worked for the federal government for a year, and then I started acting, that's been a wild ride. I've traveled a lot. Started in theater and then television and film, and every once in a while I still get to do a play. You saw the last play I did, which was also wild for me. This was my first Broadway show. But yeah, I don't have any kids, but it's time for me to start breeding. I'm thinking, I need to start breeding. This has been trying to be active right now. It's funny because with COVID, everything's been shut down as far as the industry, but it's been a surprisingly busy time. I've been doing other things as far as just writing and I have a couple. I have a company called Liberated People, and it's a social activism t-shirt and sweatshirt company. So we've been doing a lot of campaigns to raise money for different nonprofits. So it's been an interesting pandemic for sure.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks for the update. It's good having all you guys on here. Benga, we'll start with you with this next one. I got one more question before I turn it over to Brandon. Just if you can take us back to the beginning and talk about the recruiting experience, at Bucknell, and how you ultimately chose to wrestle at Bucknell.
It's wild. I've been thinking about that a lot recently. Just my whole time at Bucknell and just prior to Bucknell and afterwards. So I didn't start wrestling to my junior year in high school. I was in and out of schools and institutions. I would get in trouble a lot, and then I was in a school for troubled youth, and I mainstreamed out for 2 periods into what would have been my home school, and it was the first time I was eligible to do an after school activity because I was in the regular school, and so I went out for the wrestling team, and I loved it. And It was after I did my first year, and then my high school coach gave me some pamphlets for wrestling camps. And I chose Bucknell because, knowing nothing about colleges and university, I called Coach Ferraro from Bucknell because it sounded like a school I had heard of on television, Cornell. And I'm like, all right. And so I told him like that I wanted to come up there, and that like I'd save me money and so on. And he put me in contact with a coach and a wrestler from another high school, so I could get a ride up there. And then I remember the wrestling camp. It was amazing. I it's like I'd fallen in love with a person for the first time, like just when I found wrestling. And it just kept discovering things and discovering people, and like it was all this positive affirmation which I'd never had before, and it was amazing. And then remarkably, Coach Ferraro started to actively recruit me, and I like after that first that summer wrestling camp, and I went back to high school with a different idea what my future might be, because I'd never even considered college, but here's this coach who was now talking to me about going there and wrestling there, which was amazing to me. I still didn't know much about Bucknell. I found out that Bucknell was a good school because when I came back my senior year in high school and I started telling people that the coach at Bucknell wanted to recruit me there, like white people knew the school and they liked the school. So I'm like, oh, this must be a good school. I was like, wow. And then I started to look into it. I was like, well, this is a good school. And so I was very, very fortunate because I was not a good student. I did not have the grades. So I just have to say I was grateful to my high school coach for squeaking me through, and my college coach for squeaking me through because I did not have the grades. I became a student, like I'd say towards the end of freshman year, sophomore year in college, but getting in I was very fortunate to get in.
That's awesome. That just says what wrestling just creates opportunity, right?
Oh,
Go to a place like Bucknell, and I know we talk to our guys about it all the time, just the opportunity that wrestling can create to open up some doors that you normally maybe not experience. So that's really cool. Great story. Thanks for sharing. Brian, talk to us about your experience and why you chose Bucknell, being so close.
You're on mute, sir.
Brian, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. All right.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, I can hear Tommy Marchetti saying, all right, keep this short, Burns. All right. All right. So,
Breathe.
Yeah, breathe. So, well, I wouldn't say I was really recruited. I would say I actually recruited Coach Ferraro. I didn't have any real accomplishments in high school. It was, my senior year was my first year of varsity in high school. I had wrestled 10 years since second grade, but I had never really had any accomplishments. But I loved the process. I was on a really good team, so I worked out with like state champs and stuff like that, and I was behind some good guys. So I developed some skills, but I really wasn't developed physically. And but I knew I loved the sport. I would go over to Bloomsburg, watch Paul Keesaw wrestle over Bloomsburg, who I eventually lost to my senior year when he won the national championship that year. But so I was in the sport. I mean, obviously, you live there, Danny. It's a sport. You go to the barbershop and there's like, what weight do you wrestle, right? You talk about these things. It's part of the community. It's just part of who you are when you grow up in that area. So I knew I wanted to wrestle. So I called Coach and I said, hey, Coach, I was going to Bucknell. I wanted to go to Bucknell, not just for athletics, but, as much for academics. But I also knew that I could go there. I might have a chance of making the team and competing against, at the Division I level. And I knew that's what I kind of wanted to do. So I called Coach and I said, hey, Coach, I'm interested in coming and wrestling at Bucknell. And could I talk to you? And he said, I'll tell you what, I'll come to your home match when you wrestle Lewisburg High School, right? And I didn't even know that Bobby, his son, was on the Lewisburg team. So I was like, wow, he's coming to my home match, right? But he was really just coming to watch Bobby. But so it's funny that I almost got tech fouled that match against Vance Noon, this tall, skinny kid who somehow knew how to this power half, right? Legs power half. But I don't know where he learned that. So after the match, coach came up to me, he said, I remember exactly where we were standing on the gym floor, and he said, "You got a funny way of impressing your college coach." And so that was kind of the beginning, and then I just walked on, and that was kind of how it started. So
that's all. Listen, your story is ridiculous as far as your scholastic high school career, and then what you accomplished and did in college. I mean, it's off the charts ridiculous. It really is amazing. I hope we can get maybe more into it later. But
one thing, I mean, just since we're talking about it, we may not get to it. I never wrestled in a district tournament, right? And then I was inducted into the district Hall of Fame. So that was the other side.
I mean, you became an NCAA All-American, right?
The other side of the story.
It's amazing. It reminds me a little bit of a teammate I had at Michigan State, this guy Brian Piccolo, who's ended up being a 2-time All-American at 190 pounds, but he never placed in the Michigan State tournament. He just walk on and then he sat behind a guy for a couple of years, and he just ended up it just shows you that what you put into it is what you get out of it at the college Division I level, and just hard work, determination, tenacity, effort, self-motivation, man. You apply that and anything can happen at the college level. It's a message I try to give to our guys each and every year, if not each and every week.
Yeah, no, that's right. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that because your story is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
So, Tom, I'll turn it over to you with the recruiting process. I know your story's a little different.
Well, yeah, my recruiting process was interesting because, I was coming out of school and I really didn't know much about colleges. And my parents just said, "Why don't you go to college? Why don't you go to a good college?" And I said, "Well, I want to wrestle." So I had to kind of pick, well, I've got to go to a good school and I want to wrestle. So I had to figure out how I was going to get the best of both worlds. And, it came down, I applied to West Point. I got into West Point. My dad was, in the Army for a little bit. So he's like, "My son's going to be a ring knocker." And I went up to West Point, spent the week up there. And I'm like, "I'm not going to be a West Point ring knocker." That's not my idea of a college life. And the good thing I got out of it, because they didn't have a major in accounting, and I wanted a major in accounting, so that's what I told my parents, and it worked out pretty well. So my next trip was down to UVA, and it happened to be probably the only time that campus has looked crappy, because Brian will tell you, like, UVA is beautiful, but it was the one time UVA, it was raining, it was dreary, and I didn't like it. And the other thing was my dad never missed a wrestling match. He never missed a wrestling match. So driving 11 hours down there to the UVA to watch me wrestle, once, sometimes twice a week was just not going to work. So that kind of left me with Bucknell. I mean, Bucknell had a beautiful campus and had, had accounting, had a Greek system. There was a lot of things that were, appealing. And, then I meet Bob Ferraro. And, Bob happens to be from Easton. So immediately, we start bonding about Easton, going to Steve's Pizza and all the other things that happen in Easton. I mean, and you know about that too from your wife. So now you're tied in 6 degrees of separation. And I think it was just a lot of the camaraderie and the trust that we have with Coach Ferraro. And it kind of checked the boxes off for me. So, again, a major decision in your life, when you think about your decision tree, how'd you get here? I'm like, well, I grew up in Easton. I met a guy who was coaching at Bucknell, and he was from Easton, and that's where I ended up going. And honestly, it probably doesn't get simpler than that. We just had a really close bond, my father and I, with Coach Ferraro, and it met all the things we wanted to do, and I had a great time. That was it.
Great. Yeah, thanks for sharing, Tom. I appreciate that. Bobby, talk to us just a little bit about, because I really want to know, I'd like to know it, because I don't know if I know the story, just because maybe I'm in this situation, I don't know, a year from now with my oldest son, but I mean, was it just set in stone that you were going to Bucknell? Was it open? Will you talk about just some other options that you had, or was it just like your arm was being twisted and that was it?
No, I'd like to share, listening to how everyone got. I know how everyone got there. Like I'm intimate. I know. I was at Tom's regional tournament. I knew Brian, barely, but I know his story and how good he was because I knew Vance and watched that. Benga, I can remember. Like, this is awesome for me. I love listening to this. No, I was recruited out of high school. I had success in high school, visited, NC State, visited Wisconsin, thought about Indiana, went to Penn State to check it out. And, when it came down to it, I knew the opportunity to wrestle for my father, and that was important to both of us. And, I made a deal on laundry getting done at home and that kind of thing with my mom, if that was going to happen. But it wasn't an easy decision, to be honest, for me. But ultimately it really came down to having that time with my father and, being a part of what I grew up knowing, we had great work. I had great workout partners to look forward to there, and Tom and Brian, and we had a lot of good guys on the team at that time when I was deciding to come. So, that's really how it happened. Growing up on campus basically is you definitely take the beauty of Bucknell for granted, and the academics certainly for granted. I spent as much time on campus as probably any of us did. I didn't really come home a lot, and it all worked out well.
So were you actively recruited by these other programs where they called you up just knowing your father was the head coach at Bucknell?
Yeah, and they were all kind of understanding of the situation. I think, at NC State, their head coach was actually a good friend of my dad's, Coach Guzzo at the time.
Yeah, I remember Guz.
And, he basically said, "Hey, I know the situation. If you want to come here, I want you here." Yeah. And that's kind of how coaches approached me. They knew the situation. They knew, I wrestled just like my dad, so I did. So, as far as refining what I did, there probably wasn't a better situation. So, it was a weird, getting those phone calls at home was weird, because the Indiana coach is calling me and McFarland's on the phone, and I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. And listening, and it was great and, exciting. And then, you hang up and you're looking at your dad, and, you're going to have to talk to him about it. So it's kind of a weird time.
McFarland was the assistant at Indiana at that time?
Yeah, I think so. And so.
But that's interesting. That's why I always want to, I don't know if I've ever asked you about that or heard about that, but I was wondering.
Yeah, weird. Yeah, it's not fun. It's not going to be fun for you. I'm sure it's not going to be fun for him.
Yeah, no.
Really that.
Well, thanks, though. Steve, talk to us about your process and choosing Bucknell.
Yeah, I was pretty hands off on. I didn't travel to Alaska. The only school I visited was Bucknell. That was the only trip I made, and. I didn't have a incredible high school career at that point. As a junior, I did okay. So I had some interest, but, not a lot. And I went down to campus, and, I didn't spend an overnight, but I went down for the day, and just, it was kind of my speed, small town kind of thing I enjoyed. I wasn't 100% sure if I was going to wrestle in college. I was kind of on the fence a little bit. I was really focused on my high school career at that point. I had some things I wanted to accomplish in high school, and I wasn't looking past that necessarily. I think, I thought about wrestling in college, but it was maybe second at that point for me. I really wanted to be I wanted to be a state champ. I had all kinds of, that stuff. Everything was geared towards, a high school career and all that. So I went down for a visit, and I want to say I ran into Ken Herzig and Joe Horvath, and it was all downhill from there. Decision was made. That was pretty much it. They were in the weight room with like tank tops on or something. I don't remember. They're crazy. They were nuts. So I knew, I was like, hey, these are my people. This is it. I'm good. So I applied early admissions and got accepted, which was great. I didn't have to fill out any other applications and take any ACTs or nothing. Things were good. All life was good. And then I kind of got back to the grind. And, I actually, I ended up finishing well my high school career. So when I did well that year, I did get to go to the high school nationals, Bobby, what you're working on, it was the that's the same tournament, right? I'm thinking, yeah. So I didn't get to meet Bobby and Coach Ferraro and everything and went on the picnic. And again, I just knew it was a good fit for me. I didn't really need to, I didn't feel like I wanted to travel around. That's where I wanted to go. I knew if I wanted to wrestle in college, that was a great opportunity for me. So it was an easy choice.
But it was one of those deals that you just felt like when you visited, like you just had a feeling this is the right fit, the right place, right? That's what I always say. When you visit the place, you have a pretty good feeling when you leave the place, whether it's a good fit for you or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's spent a couple hours with Horvath and Herzig some weekend, and then get back to us. But that that was win-win.
I'm with you, man. I'm with you. Yeah, speaking of those NHSCA, I think I wrestled in the inaugural event, first ever inaugural event. It was in Pittsburgh. And that's where I made the finals, wrestled Earl Walker from Delaware, who ended up wrestling at Boston University.
Is it 91?
I wrestled him for years after that in college too. And I think so I can say and raise my hand that I was one of the first participants in that event in Pittsburgh. I'll never forget it. It opened up a lot of doors for me because recruiting, they recruited you into the spring of your senior year. And after that event, I got a ton of calls. I'll never forget. And I was like, I'm going to.
Was it 90 or 91?
Pardon?
Was it 90 or 91? What was the inaugural event?
That was 1990. It was the
90.
spring of 1990 in Pittsburgh. I drove up there from South Carolina. It was awesome. The rest is history. Hey, at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Brandon Seidman, our guy Brandon. Great kid, great dude, hard worker, lives the lifestyle in the mat room, out the mat room. And he's going to ask a question that each of you guys will answer. And the time being, I apologize, but I'm going to go grab a charger for my laptop. So I will be off the screen for about a minute. Sorry. So I'll turn it over to you, Brandon.
Thank you. So I guess I'll dive right into it with my first question, and that is, what advice would you give me or any other wrestlers that are in our program today about the college wrestling experience at Bucknell? And I'll just go off the order of my screen, and that is Mr. Caruso.
Yeah, let me get off mute here. I guess, advice, I would say to set clear goals. I think setting goals for yourself and the team early on really was a huge, I didn't catch up to that till I was a senior, really. It wasn't until I sat down and identified really what I wanted to do that things kind of fell into place a little bit for me. And, being a part of the team in 95, we had an amazing team. We had we had a great season. It was amazing, a year for us. But I would say my advice would be set clear goals for yourself and for the team, and then just focus on those goals every day. Get better every day. There's a time for distractions, later on in life, but that would be my advice. Because when you get old like Bobby and you look back, you're no one. I don't look back and think about. All I think about is wrestling when I look back on my college years. I got to be honest. That's really what you think about when you look back, and you'll want to get back on that mat forever. So make the most of it and take advantage of the opportunity. That'd be my advice.
Thank you. Move on to Mr. Ferraro.
Mute, Bobby.
What's that, Brian?
Good
Said
now.
unmute.
Okay. What Steve said really resonates with me. The window is so short, like you have 4 years of college, and then really, unless you're Olympic level, you're done. So, like Steve finished with, the time for distraction. If you set clear goals and you really want to achieve something, just know that 4-year window may sound like something, but you have a lifetime to deal with what you did or did not do within those 4 years. And for me, that, I'll be honest, that kind of haunts me, still. So I had some accomplishments, but it wasn't at all what I wish I would have committed. I wish I would have committed to it a little bit heavier than I did. Because the window, comes and goes, and the next thing you know, it's you're living with, a little remorse on what you did or didn't do while you were there.
Thank you. I'll move on to Mr. Marchetti.
And you called me Mr. and you said my name wrong too. That's 2 strikes.
Sorry about that.
I want to piggyback off what Steve and Bobby said, but it's not the same thing. I believe you have to set goals, but before you set goals, you need to figure out what's most important for you, right? Because, like I said, I went to Bucknell because I really wanted to go to a good school, but I also wanted to have a chance to be an NCAA champion in Division I. Now, I ended up, being an accounting major, which wasn't basket weaving. I ended up, doing well in wrestling, but it demanded a lot from you. I was a TA in accounting. I joined the Ferraro, which I know is often been a contentious point with the new program. There's a lot of things you can do, and there's a lot of things that distract you. When you get older in life, the one thing you'll hear is multitasking and figuring out how to manage your time. And you have to do that because you can set goals, say, listen, I want to have a 4.0. I want to be a national champion. I want to be president of my fraternity. And by the way, I want to go out every Wednesday night, Thursday night, and I'm going to take off Friday because I'm going to go out drinking on Saturday. And that's great. You may want to enjoy and get the total experience, but you've got to prioritize what you want to do, what's most important for you before you can even set that goal.
Well, you're describing Eddie Curran, I think.
Yeah, you can't set yourself up to succeed unless you set something up realistic that says, I'm going to be a national champ and I'm going to manage my time so I can get to that goal. You're setting yourself up for failure. So I think, figuring out what's most important for you is probably the first thing you need to do before you set a goal.
Thank you. And then I'll move on to Mr. Burns.
Yeah, I'm going to pass on some wisdom that my dad, he would always say this, and it's kind of like maybe kind of plays off the same theme that everybody else said, but it just kind of crystallizes the message. He always used to say, life's about choices, and that was it. Right? Life's about choices, right? And then, my part of that, choose wisely. That's it.
Thank you. And then my last person, I'm afraid I'm gonna mess up this last name, but I'll give it a shot. Mr. Akinade.
I respect the effort. I will echo everything everyone said. It's like like Bobby said, these 4 years go by so fast, and this youth, it blinds us to how fast it really would go by, and we take a lot of things for granted, and like Tom said, making priorities so you know how to structure what your goals and it all comes down to life being about choices. These are all choices. And in these 4 years, you have to, I mean, your coaches, you'll hear this, especially in wrestling, and knowing Dan, I'm sure he says it, like putting everything into it. But it's funny because being young, I don't think we realize when we're young how much we actually have to put into it, even if we think we're putting everything into it, right? And so if you take away anything from what we're saying now, you have so much more than you think to put into this sport during these 4 years. And it's so whenever you think like you've done it, you haven't. There's more, and you gotta like I think like Bobby says, I think about it all the time, and I have a pretty good life, and I still have regrets about wrestling. You know what I mean? I think about wrestling all the time. People ask me all the time, like, what would you do if you weren't doing this? Easy. I'd be wrestling and writing. That's it. And there are things that haunt me that I did do and I didn't do, things I didn't know. So explore all your opportunities in and outside of the wrestling room about wrestling. Train when you're not there. Talk about it. Study it. But because it all influences the person you're building yourself to be when you're past wrestling. It all helps construct that person, whatever it is you're going to do, whatever your major is.
Thank you. I think as a program and as a whole, I think Coach Warrensberger does a pretty good job of enforcing, having your priorities straight and your goals. And I mean, for me personally, I know I try to do that to the best of my ability. And yeah, I'm trying to back it over to Coach Warrens.
Yeah. Thanks, Brandon. That's spot on, because Brandon lives it. He really does. The dude lives it. And we got a handful of guys that do. But the thing I love about this, and just because the other groups, whether it's 70s, 80s, the 2000s, the 50s, 60s, it's pretty similar as far as, man, when you're in that moment, you're really not thinking about a whole lot but yourself and that this moment's going to last forever. But it's on in a blink of an eye. And choices matter. You take advantage of the opportunity. You don't want to have any regrets. That's why I love this, because all our guys are going to see these. They're going to watch these. And just to hear, I mean, you guys are all coaches basically saying, what we try to talk to these guys about, maybe not daily, but weekly. Weekly, we talk about the whole lifestyle piece. What you put into it is what you get out of it. Are you getting enough rest? How is your nutrition? Are you hanging out with the right people? Are you going to class? Are you putting extra work in? Those areas, right? And that doesn't mean you're going to win the popularity contest on campus, but, you're going to be a leader and you're going to be a respected guy. And that's what we try to build our program around, are not guys that want to come and be the most coolest guy or the most popular guy on campus, but that wants to be a leader and a character guy. So I appreciate you guys saying all those things. It just backs up and reinforces that this time it goes fast, and you don't want to have any regrets. That's for sure. So thank you. I guess my next question would be, and Benga, I'll start with you. Just with what's your most memorable experience, and maybe you have more than one, and that's fine too. But what's your most memorable experience as part of the Bucknell wrestling program?
Boy, that's a big question and a loaded question given the years I was there.
With you, man.
It's funny. I have so many. Like I play these matches over and over in my head, and I play certain decisions, and most memorable. I should have prepared for this one. The cutting weight. So when you go to college, when you go to a D1 program, like it's a sport, but it's a business, right? So it's not like high school, or depending, I guess, what high school you go to, but when you go to college, it's a different level. And I remember I cut weight to wrestle 164 my freshman year, and then I think 174, and then some wrestlers died in Michigan, I believe. Do you guys remember that? They died in a steam room, and so the NCAA changed it and added 7 pounds, which was, I think, just kind of like symbolic, because adding 7 pounds didn't really, everyone would just cut weight to the next weight class. So And then like the last year or so, I'd wrestle 184, and those guys were cutting down from like 200, something like that. But I was I did well at that weight class. I was, there were bigger guys, but I was just naturally at that weight. And I remembered, this is one of many memories. I don't know if it's my most memorable, just like how good it felt to not really have to cut weight. And just wrestle like freely at that weight class. But I also remembered how there was a certain awareness that cutting weight gave me, and that I didn't necessarily have when I didn't have to cut weight. And it was just, I guess it's this awareness of my body that started to really happen while I was at Bucknell wrestling. And not only awareness of my body, I became kind of like a carnival freak. To this day, I can guess people's weight within 5 pounds if I look at them. It's like, it's crazy. Like it's wild. And if I pick them up, again, a carnival freak, I can guess it within 1 pound. And all that I can thank Bucknell Wrestling for. But you become very aware of your body and everybody else's body around you and how you move in the world.
Yeah, no doubt, man. I think that's all wrestlers. You can pick someone's weight pretty easily. You just got to be careful when you're predicting a girl's weight.
I know. I'm like, I'm not even going to do that anymore.
There on like 5 pounds lower or 10.
Doesn't translate well.
No. Steve, your most memorable experience as a Bucknell wrestler, or in the Bucknell wrestling program?
Yeah, I would say that my proudest the experience, and Bobby and I were emailing about this a week or two back, was that being on the team that won the conference title in '95 at the tournament over Ryder in their home gym. That was a big one. It was such a great team. There were so many guys on that team that I'm super close friends with. I'm still in touch with them today, all the time. We get together, we talk and things. And that was certainly memorable. My opponent in the finals was a 1 seed. He was from Ryder. So the gym was a little on the hostile side. Not that I ever expected a friendly crowd in New Jersey or anything, but that was a memorable experience, and it was great. I think everyone on the team contributed that weekend for sure, and we really came together. And I was real proud of that. That was a real memorable achievement. The other one, just that year the NCAA tournament was in Carver Hawkeye Arena. That was memorable, and that was disappointing for me for sure. But it was just a huge packed house crowd. It was amazing, incredible wrestling experience. Those two, the opportunities we had at Bucknell and were amazing. And both of those, that I think about both of those things all the time. Being in that gym in Ryder and coming out on top as a team, seeing the look on all their faces just brings me amazing. It was so satisfying. It still brings me amazing. I think about it all the time.
That's cool. There's nothing cooler than seeing your team accomplish something, for sure. I don't know if I liked Carver Hawkeye that year a whole lot.
Oh, it was miserable.
It wasn't a great year.
It was miserable. I had the 2 seed, the guy from Oregon, just murdered me, just hammered me. It was like a peewee. I had to take top in the second period. I literally picked top. Bobby's laughing. I had to put a leg in, and I just was like, I'm not letting him up. And then third period is like neutral, and that was that. Just hammered me. I was like,
oh man,
thank you. Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, it was something.
Yeah. Brian.
Yeah, you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
That's actually Steve's story. We're here, but a lot of the guys, that actually brings the team closer, because here we are at Bucknell, wrestling Division I. We're wrestling against state schools, fully funded, scholarships, right? And, so it's like, Johnny gets to go up against the #1 seed in the country, right? And you get to see him try to do his best, right? That story's I just love like hearing that, just because that reminds me of just kind of being part of the team and watching everybody go through that process. So I guess for me, also in the rider gym. So remember, I guess my story earlier, and I'll try, maybe it gets old at some point, but so I hadn't accomplished a whole lot. So the biggest memory for me really was my first conference win. So that was against Scarpa from Ryder in the finals at Ryder. And earlier that year, it was an entertaining match, maybe kind of like the match against Lewisburg High School, where Scarpa came out with an over and under, and not only did he lateral drop me, but my feet like went parallel, and I did like a 360, and then he put me on my back. This was in the dual meet, and from there, that kind of set the tone for the match. But then at the end of the season, I'm wrestling him in the ECC finals, and it was a completely different match. I completely controlled the match and ended up winning it. And that was really kind of my first big win. And that memory, and, just the people, the support that I had, kind of the desire that I had to go out there and accomplish that. And also just all the support that the team gave me after that match. It just felt so good to have that experience, and to have all the support from the team that I had at the time. It was just it was pretty awesome. And then I guess other kind of wins beyond that. I mean, even kind of like placing at nationals, right, was sort of pales in comparison really to that first big win. So yeah, that was a fun one.
Wow, that's cool. That's amazing to hear that. You think it would be the nationals,
Yeah, no, but it was really just sort of that was what turned the corner for me. That sort of gave me confidence.
Yeah, no doubt.
And yeah, that was a good one.
That's awesome. Marchetti.
Well, I'm probably going to disappoint you because I'm not going to say it was placed at nationals either. I mean, listen, wrestling is a journey, right? It's not a destination sport. You got to be kind of sick to do what we do. It's a grueling sport. There's no real accolades. You don't wear your medals on your chest, and you don't walk around, and other people don't walk around with their name on the back of their shirts. You just do this because you love it. When I got to Bucknell, I can remember walking into the wrestling room the first day of practice. And there is this guy who is just getting killed. They're just beating the hell out of him. And Coach Ferraro's on top. And, the assistant coach, blow the whistle, get warming up. This guy's not getting up. And Coach Ferraro's still beating him. And he's not letting him up. He's on top. And he's like, you got to get out. And he would not let him up. We finished practice, and he was still on top. And I remember Eddie Curran telling me, you don't ever wrestle Coach. Because if you ever grab him, he's going to wrestle you till you get out. And from that day on, I just had it in my mind that I'm going to get out and beat the hell out of this guy. Like, that's what I want to do. And, my freshman year, I'd go at it, and he'd kill me. And I remember the one time he held me down, hurt my mouth down, squeezed my nose, and I'm suffocating. Like, I can't breathe. I passed out. I woke up. He was still on me, and I had to get out. I was claustrophobic, and I'm like, I got to get out of here. And I tell you what, no one ever kept me on bottom. And I just kept on going and kept on going. And I think I made it to sophomore year, probably midway through the season. Bob, you'll know the date better than me, because we were wrestling and we were going at it, and I grabbed him and I squeezed him, and I heard a pop. He's like, oh, my ribs. I'm like, no. I threw him down. He tried to get up, goes, oh, no, I gotta stop. No, not letting you go. And I just kept hammering him. And he was like, I almost made him start screaming, like, you gotta let me up. And I'm like, you know what? I was thinking he's like 41, he's getting old. I'm like, all right, this was my day. I got it. And I don't know if he broke a rib or he hurt his ribs, and that was it. He didn't come back. He didn't wrestle in practice like for another 2 weeks. I'm like, you know what? That was it. That was my moment. I'm like, you know what? I am gonna sort of keep going, and you set your goal, and you keep resetting goals, and they're small, but like every little goal you set builds on and just keeps building going forward. And to me, that was a defining moment because I went there because he was that coach. I'm like, if I can beat this guy or I can get out from this guy, I'm making the transition from high school to college. And that was kind of a defining moment for me. I'm like, you know what, and I always sit back to it because, like, I tell you what, he would get people on, like, you were not getting out. And, that was a defining moment.
Listen, that's awesome. That is really, really cool. I know I'm not.
I'm just gonna say, Tom, I'm gonna use that too. That's gonna be my moment as well. If I can just cling on to that moment and wish I had that moment, and that was an amazing story.
Yeah, it was an amazing story. I know I'm not supposed to tell a story, but I had a similar story. My coach at Michigan State. I was in between my freshman and sophomore year. I was redshirting, and I was at the Big Ten tournament. And the key to college, is if you can get away, you can start making that transformation, right? And then you start and the transition. I couldn't get away, and finally he rode me for over an hour in Madison, Wisconsin, the University of Wisconsin restroom. I kept thinking the workout was going to be over, and he said, "It's not over till you get out." I was in tears. I was crying. It took me over an hour, and finally but that changed my career. It changed my career, the trajectory of my career, because I now believed I could get out from anyone once I finally got out. That's an amazing story. I love that. There's a lot of truth to that, just that determination. Thanks for sharing that. Bobby.
We were going back and forth, and I just, growing up around the program, I have so many memories of like big dual meet wins for Bucknell and at the time. And but my proudest accomplishment easily is our 95 team that won the conference that year. It was we became really close as a team that year. We worked hard, we pushed each other. I had never been on like a winning team before. Like my high school team, my sophomore year won 0 matches. I was used to losing as a team a lot. But that team came together, and as Steve said, like we needed our 18-pounder at the time to like win a match, and he won a match. And we needed a guy who just lost his chance to go to the NCAAs to come back and take third, and they sucked it up and came back and took third. And like the conference back then, you had to win it and or get one of like 2 or 3 wild cards at the time, and Bucknell never got those for one reason or another. So you lost the match at the conference, and you were done. Your chance to go to the NCAAs was done. So that team pulled together. We all had that common goal. Easily my proudest moment, I would say, in wrestling. Individual matches or wins, I can't really think of any. We had a great dual meet win in Cal Poly in a real hostile environment one time when they were a pretty good program. I remember that because I just never had been that angry going into a match, just the way we were kind of being treated out there. So that dual meet win sticks out to me. But that conference championship for our team, my workout partner lost in the finals. He didn't get a chance to go to the NCAAs. That kind of crushed me. So it was like a real high moment, but real low. So I was crushed for him because he was so good. And Mike Rush was his name. He's a good friend of mine. And that's the memory that I reflect on and remember.
Thanks, Bobby. I appreciate that. That's really good stuff. A couple more questions we'd like to get through if we can. I know Brandon's got one more, and then I would almost like that with just one more. It's a really brief one. Mine would be, but Brandon, if you want to shoot your last question.
Can you guys hear me all right?
Yep.
Okay, so I know a big part of being a student athlete at Bucknell is not only the wrestling part, but the afterlife part as far as careers go. So my question is, what advice do you have about networking and finding the right job after Bucknell? And I'll start with Mr. Ferraro first.
Yeah, this is a good question for me because I didn't use it. I didn't use the Bucknell network the way I should have. I have a wide Bucknell network, a lot of wrestlers. You can't be ashamed to use the network that's in place. I'm sure they still have the career development center there. They have a lot of resources for you as a student that you just got to engage in. Your professors are connected all over the country. And whatever your major is, and, having a relationship with them is really, I think, important, because they're very connected people as well. So use the resources that the school offers. It's easy to get lazy on that, or at least it was for me. Wrestling takes a lot of energy out of you. Academics take a lot of energy out of you, but probably the most impactful part to Bucknell is the network that's in place for you to tap into. So just don't be ashamed to use it. Don't be embarrassed to reach out to alumni or people that you can connect to and utilize their connections, because I think everyone's excited to help guys like yourself. So definitely tap into that. And again, speaking from experience, I did not do that. I did not do that, and wish that I had.
Thank you. Moving forward, Mr. Marcetti. I think I got it right this time.
No, you're getting there.
I got that. All right.
At least it's your last question. I'm kidding, Brandon. Listen, I'll be honest. I mean, when I came out of school, I didn't graduate with great grades, but I had a couple jobs during college. I had some success in wrestling. I was in fraternity. I had extracurricular activities, other interests, and I think back then people had a greater appreciation for being a well-rounded, I don't want to say well-rounded athlete just because it's sports, but people used to hire people because they believed that they were capable of doing anything that was put in front of them. Nowadays, the recruiting process is 1,000 times more difficult, 1,000 times more challenging. To come out of a good school that's just assumed. To have a 4.0 is another thing that's just assumed. That's probably your minimum criteria, just to get a look. So you've got to be smart about using the network. And I will tell you, I got lucky coming out of school because I had these qualities that companies wanted, so I didn't use the network at all. I just got by saying, listen, this is where I am. And I think I think it was the Big Six for accounting back then, and I got offers from 5 out of the Big Six firms, which was more than anybody in my graduating accounting class. And I certainly was not near the top. If anything, I was near the bottom. But they just perceived me as being able to, achieve things and being well-rounded and being able to fit into a team and that type of culture. I've been dealing with, senior hiring for the last, call it 20 years. And there is a very strenuous HR screening process that goes through that has taken a lot of that functionality or decision-making away from hiring managers for a number of reasons. What I will say is, if you build your resume and you build your qualifications and you still do the right things, using the Bucknell network, using the relationships, getting recommendations, connectivity, will get you noticed. Because right now, if you go to apply for a job, you're going to be one of 400 or 4,000. you're a needle in a haystack. You get somebody who is another Bucknell alumni or has a friend there, and you've done some work for them, or they, again, you should try and get into the Bucknell network to get an internship, to do some other work, to get involved in a charity, to get involved in any cause, just so they can experience what it's like to work with you. Because then they can go to bat for you and say, well, listen, I know this kid. I know what he's capable of doing. I know the type of person he is. It's not just you pick up the phone, hey, you went to Bucknell, I'll help you out. I think you got to be realistic about that. That said, I would echo what Bobby says. Don't be ashamed to use it. I would say that access to that network is significantly more valuable now than it has ever been in the past, and it probably will remain that way.
Thank you. Moving forward, Mr. Burns.
Yeah, so I guess I'll just share my experience. I guess my experience is throughout your career when you graduate, it's not always simple to kind of find your passion or kind of what you enjoy doing. But I think my experience is that if you find your passion, if you find kind of what you enjoy doing, what you want to do, that what you're going to find is that there will be people that go out of their way to help you accomplish that. And it's kind of like, think about the same thing in wrestling, right? You're kind of going through the process, right? But it sounds like what coach is telling me is that you're the kind of guy who has a goal. You're passionate. You want to put more time in. Well, guess what? Who's the coach going to help, right? Who is, you're connected to coach. It's not an alumni connection, but it's a connection, right? And he sees you. He wants to help you, right? He wants to help you get better. He wants to help you accomplish your goals. The same thing happens in any environment, including your work environment, right? So when you're passionate about what you do, when you enjoy what you do, there's going to be people, and sometimes, like my experience happened to be, I didn't proactively go after someone who happened to have a Bucknell degree, but there was a person in my career who was from Bucknell who helped me along the way, but not because I pursued it, right? It was more of a passive thing. But so I think that maybe is just advice. Don't go out there thinking, oh, I've got a Bucknell degree and now that's all I need to do, because there's a lot of people with Bucknell degrees who are maybe not even employed, right? Or staying at home and maybe their partner's working or what. So just the connection and the alumni relationship itself isn't enough. It's, what kind of person are you and what do you enjoy doing and what are you passionate about? Just like in the wrestling room, right? You think about the same thing.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Dana wanted to say hi. Everyone.
Hi, Dana. My wife wanted to say hi too. I should let her come in.
Sorry.
Yeah.
All right. Moving forward, Mr. Akinabe. Sorry for the pronunciation.
And it's all right. It's all right. Akinabe. It's more complicated than it is, or it's just complicated.
If we did this like Hollywood Squares, you could have just said the guy in the center thing, like it's a lot easier this way. Maybe next time 9 people on, you can kind of do it that way.
It's kind of set up like that on my screen. The question is great.
The guy underneath Marchetti.
What's your major, Brandon?
Sociology.
Sociology. Like Bobby, I didn't really use the network I didn't use it. But I also didn't. I don't think I was aware of what was accessible to me as far as the network. And it's real and it's very strong. And for such a small school, there's a lot of Bucknell alumni out there, and everyone I've ever met has been very willing to help and encourage alumni and students. But I think Brian had a great point that you have to find what you enjoy, what you're passionate about, because that's what's going to sustain you. Whatever, like the degree won't sustain you, and as now just being in whatever field alone won't sustain you, especially with everything that's going on. You have to years go by fast, so you find what you enjoy, and that can change. And if it changes, there'll be Bucknell alumni who will be there to help you, whatever the field is. So just know that you're part of that. Also, you're part of this wrestling family. That doesn't, as you can see how wrestling still haunts us all. It never goes away. So you like that's very real. It's very real. So just take chances and go be like all the stuff that you're learning in wrestling. It does apply directly into your real life, as far as being good enough is not enough. You have to go further and do more than everyone else and do it better. And just what that journey is. And the sport is well positioned to help people gain those skills to apply it in real life. So like that network is strong and it's real. And you're part of like 2 strong networks that comes from your experience at Bucknell.
I got to tell you, from a wrestling standpoint, I agree with what Ben said. The Bucknell aspect's one thing, but you'll find that wrestling is a brotherhood where they look at you and like, well, so you went to a good school, but you wrestled? Like so tell me about that. I mean, because they look, if you can, and I guess it was Gable who said it, right? Once you do wrestling, everything else is easy. And everybody, whether we believe that it was that hard, because we went through it like, it was hard at times, but most people, they're not going into doing this voluntarily. Nobody voluntarily goes to do wrestling, right? So when you go and you talk to people, I remember going in for a job and one guy sitting back there, he's giving me a 3rd degree. He goes, he just got to the bottom. He looked at me again. He goes, because you wrestled for Bucknell? What weight did you wrestle? Because he wrestled for UVA. He was a couple years ahead of me, and I guess he placed 4th in the country that year before I was there. And he goes, oh wait, you were my weight? And then we went on and on. But like wrestling, there's a very big brotherhood and a very high level of respect. And even people who didn't wrestle, I think they do recognize the amount of commitment, dedication, and determination and that goes into that sport. And I wouldn't be afraid to lean on that as well.
It puts you on a different path. Honestly, it's one of the biggest, if not the biggest, reason that I've been able to have a great deal of fortune as an actor is because of my wrestling background. Like when I got into acting, and like your waiting tables here and and you're barely surviving it, but like you went through wrestling practice, that. So that was nothing, like as far as like trying to figure out your way out as